let's have a story about some superheroes. Now, if you were a superhero, what special skill would you have? Would you like to be able to have Spidey's web slingers? Or would you like to be able to have X-ray eyes? Or maybe shoot fire? Or have ice come out of your fingers? Or, well, there's so many different skills you could have. What would you choose? And what name would you give yourself if you were a superhero? Now, in my superhero story, what we need is a wooden spoon. Now, that's not quite the sort of thing you expect a superhero to have. Ooh, a wooden spoon. I wonder what superhero might have. My special skill or my special power is a wooden spoon. Well, a wooden spoon does come into the story, but there's a lot more to it as well. And it goes like this. Long ago, there was a king. Now, he was one of those kings who wore a crown and thought he could have anything he wanted. Just like the king we heard about in last week's story, the king who wanted to go and take the moon and wear it as a brooch, that sort of king. Well, this king was just as bad. He wanted something that nobody else had, something that no other king had. So he thought, and he thought, and he thought, and then he said, I know. And he called all his wise men and women together and he said, I want you to find me something. I want you to find me a ship that sails on the land. Duh. Well, they all looked at him and they said, Your Majesty, a ship, you see, a ship sails on the water. It can't sail on the land. I don't care, said the king. I want a ship that sails on the land. But you've got lots of ordinary ships, Your Majesty. You've got an amazing navy full of ships, a harbour full of ships. Yes, he said, but they sail on the water. They don't sail on the land. And I want you to get me a ship that sails on the land. In the end, he looked at them and said, Oh, if you want anything doing round here, you have to do it yourself. And so he clapped his hands and called for his scribe to write him a proclamation. Now, that's a message that he could send all over the country. And this proclamation said that he would give a bag of gold and the princess's hand in marriage to anyone who could bring him a ship that sailed on the land. That's an odd thing to do, isn't it? I don't know what the princess said about it. I don't know that she had a lot of choice. Well, the message went out all across the country until it reached a forest, and in the forest there were 3 woodcutters, 3 brothers. Now, I'm sure you all know what woodcutters do. They're the ones who chop down wood and prepare it for sticks or make it into planks that you can build furniture out of. Now, the first brother said, I'm a very good carpenter. And by the way, a carpenter doesn't lay carpets. A carpenter makes furniture and things out of woods. And he went into the forest and he picked up the big heavy axe and he started to chop down a tree. Well, it was a really hot day, just like today. And he was getting so tired when all of a sudden down flew a magpie. You probably know what a magpie is. It's a black and white bird. And the magpie looked at him and went, What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? Now, the eldest brother was a bit hot and sticky, and so he was rather rude to the magpie, and he said, Oh, I'm just making wooden spoons. Wooden spoons, said the magpie and flew away. And after that, every single bit of a tree he cut, every chip, every scrap turned into a wooden spoon. And by the end of the day, he had a hill of wooden spoons, and that wasn't any good. So he stamped his foot and went home. The second brother went, Oh, I could do better than that. I'm an excellent carpenter. And he went into the forest. He picked up the big heavy axe and he began to chop at the tree. But he got just as hot and sweaty. And in the end, when the magpie flew down and went, What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? He went, Oh, I'm just making wooden spoons. Come on, you can join in. Wooden spoons, said the magpie and flew away. And after that, every scrap or chip he cut turned into a wooden spoon, and soon he had a mountain of wooden spoons, and that was no good either. Now, the third brother was much younger, and they didn't think he was any good at anything. But when he said he would go into the forest and cut down a tree and build a ship that sails on land, well, his older brothers just laughed at him. But he did it, and he went into the forest and he started cutting down a tree, and he really worked hard. There was the magpie. You can join in. Come on. What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? What you doing? I'm building a ship that sails on the land, said the boy seriously. "A ship that sails on land! A ship that sails on land!" said the magpie, and flew away. And after that, every scrap, every chip he cut became part of a ship. Even the leaves that came from the tree became part of the sails. And soon he had a magnificent ship. The boy climbed into the ship, put his hands on the steering wheel, and it began to sail. And it sailed and it sailed and it sailed through the forest until it came to the fields. And then it sailed and it sailed and it sailed through the fields. And there, in a field, stood a man. Now the man was standing at a table which was piled high with things to eat. There were puddings and pies, there was meat and there were sandwiches, everything you could think of, pizzas, burgers, a lot. And he was just stuffing them into his face, nom, 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 gobbling and gulping. But the more he ate, the more he held his tummy and went, "I'm so hungry." "What's wrong?" said the boy. "Oh," said Hungry Man, "I can never get enough to eat." "Ah," said the woodcutter, "you better come to the palace. That's where I'm going. I'm sure you'll find enough food there." So into the boat got, yes, our first superhero with a super skill, Hungry Man. So put your hand on your stomach, hold up your hand and go, "Hungry Man." Well, they sailed and they sailed and they sailed through the fields till they came to a field. And in a field stood a man. Now, he was standing by a table. It wasn't covered in food, but it was covered in things to drink. There were jugs, there were glasses, there were bottles. Gug, 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 gug. He was drinking everything on that table. But the more he drank, the more he held his throat and said, "I'm so thirsty." "What's wrong?" said the woodcutter boy. "Well," said a thirsty man, "the more I drink, the thirstier I get. I can never find enough to stop me being thirsty." "You better come to the palace," said the woodcutter. "There's bound to be something special for you to drink there." So into the boat got Thirsty Man. So now we have, well, I suppose we better start treating the woodcutter as a superhero. So we'll go, "The woodcutter, yeah," give him a cheer. And then we go, "Hungry Man," and we go, "Thirsty Man." Well, they sailed and they sailed and they sailed through the fields till they came to a field. And in a field stood a woman. Now, she was doing something very strange. She was dragging a whole oak tree across the field. And halfway through, she just lifted it onto her shoulder, roots, branches and all. "Wow," said the boy, "you're strong. What are you doing?" "Oh," she said, I just need a new broom to sweep my house." "Oh," said the boy, "that's very strong. You better come to the palace. I'm sure there'll be something special for you to do there." So into the boat got Strong Woman. Strong Woman. So now we've got a list of our superheroes. The woodcutter, yeah! Hungry Man, Thirsty Man, and Strong Woman. Well, they sailed and they sailed and they sailed through the fields till they came to a field. And in the field stood a woman. But she was looking up into the sky and she was puffing out her cheeks and she was blowing. And as she blew, all the clouds disappeared out of the sky. "What are you doing?" "Oh," said the woman, "I'm just fed up of waiting for my washing to dry. So I blew the clouds away." "Oh," said the boy, "that's very, very clever. Why don't you come to the palace with me?" So into the boat got Woman Who Blows the Clouds. Now we're ready with all the superheroes. The woodcutter, yeah! Hungry Man, Thirsty Man, Strong Woman, and Woman Who Blows the Clouds. Well, they sailed and they sailed and they sailed till they got to the palace, and there was the king. He was delighted to see the ship that sailed on land. But he wasn't so happy to see that it had been made or built by a poor woodcutter boy, and the bag of gold he gave him was really a bit titchy. And then he said, "I know I said you could marry the princess, but, well, you see, it's the custom here that if we hold a wedding, all the food has to be made fresh. And at the moment, we've got enough food to last for days, weeks, months, perhaps longer, so we can't hold a wedding for now." Who do you think the boy sent to the kitchen? You're right, it was Hungry Man. He took one look at the kitchen, and he ate, and he ate, and he ate, and he ate, and he ate till there was nothing left. And then he held his tummy and went, "That was delicious. Now what's for dinner?" The king was horrified, but he didn't say anything. He said, "Look, well, that's solved one problem, but there is another. You see, There's also a custom that we have to make everything new to drink too, and at the moment we've got a cellar full of things to drink. And so we couldn't hold a wedding for a while, perhaps months, years. Who do you think the boy sent to the cellar? You're right, it was Thirsty Man. Thirsty Man's eyes lit up when he saw the cellar, and he began to guzzle, and gulp, and he drank till there was nothing left. And then he looked around and said, that was good, but I'm still thirsty. The king was horrified, and this time he thought he'd better do something about this situation. So he sent for his soldiers, and they all put on their helmets, and they picked up their swords and their spears, and he said, arrest that boy. And they all began to march towards the boat. Who do you think the boy sent out? You're right, it was Strong Woman. She picked up her oak tree and she twirled in a big circle. And the oak tree knocked them down like ninepins and sent them up into the air, doing somersaults until they landed on their heads in the duck pond. And soldiers didn't like that very much because it dented their helmets and they refused to try again. The king said, what do I always say? If you want something doing round here, you have to do it yourself. So he put on his own helmet, picked up his own sword, climbed onto his horse and began to charge towards the boat. Who do you think the woodcutter boy sent out? Well, you're right, it was Woman Who Blows the Clouds. She puffed out her cheeks and she blew. And the clouds were swept away. But so was the king. Up into the air, 3 times over the clouds, over the hills, and no one ever saw where he landed. After that, the country didn't have a king, and all the people said, we need a new king. And they thought about it, and they said, I know, we'll have the woodcutter. And they had the woodcutter boy to be their king, and he ruled well and wisely with the help of Hungry Man and Thirsty Man and Strong Woman and Woman Who Blows the Clouds. But as to whether he ever married the princess, I think that was really up to the woodcutter and the princess, don't you? Because it doesn't really come into the story. And I think that's the oldest story, superhero story, that I've ever come across, and I think it's a very good one too. If you could have a super skill, what would you have? Would you be like Strong Woman? Or would you be like Woman Who Blows the Clouds? Would you have something different? You know, there's lots of stories you'll find in the library about all sorts of superheroes. Ones from long, long time ago. Stories, legends of Greek or Norse heroes. They all had superpowers. Or you find stories about some very modern and strange superheroes. Or, of course, you could also always make up some for yourself. You could even make yourself into a superhero, and I'll send you some story sheets or some drawing sheets to help you do just that. But we better say goodbye to Sparky, hadn't we? Now here he is. He's in his lamp. So are you ready? Now you remember how to call him, don't you? Do you remember it goes abracadabra? That was it. Alakazam, hocus pocus, bam bam bam. So are we ready? Abracadabra, wave. Alakazam, that's better. Hocus pocus, that's both hands, ready to bounce. Bam, bam, bam. Here you are. Sparky, what are you doing then? Oh, you're being a superhero. You're being Mr. Strong, are you? Yeah, or maybe you could be, Mr. Scary. I think the children could do better. They could make up better superheroes. As for you, how about doing what you're supposed to do? Your super skill is supposed to be giving wishes. Oh, you've got a wish for the children, have you? You have? What is it? He wishes you a really happy summer holiday and lots of very, very exciting reading. He makes a wish for you that if you go searching in the library, you might find the best story adventure you've ever found. Go on, go looking. You never know what you're going to find in a library. So it's goodbye from me and from Sparky.